Happy Thursday! I'm here today with my first 2020 video, which is crazy. I can't believe that it's gonna be 2020. That seemed so far away when I was a little kid, and now it seems like we're living in the future. That's what it feels like to me. I know it sounds ridiculous, but let me know if you feel the same way. It's so strange that we're to 2020. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about the books that I want to reread during 2020. I made this video last year. It was one of my first videos that I uploaded, actually was one of the books that I wanted to reread last year. I reread so many books in 2019 and I am so happy about it. I had a lot of books that I really wanted to get to, but this year I don't have a ton like I did last year. Last year I had so many that I just felt like compelled to reread, and I hadn't read them in a long time. I just really wanted to reread them. But this year I don't have as many. When I was like looking over my shelves, I have one that I reread a lot. I have a series I wanted to reread. I have a series that I've reread before but I want to like catch up on. But those were like the main ones that I wanted to reread. So I have three others that were not a part of those, like standard ones, but let's just go ahead and start talking about them. First one I want to talk about is one that was on my reread list for last year, and it was the one I did not get to. I'm going to try to get this one as soon as I can into the year. Hopefully maybe in January I'll be able to get to this one, but we'll see. And that was Winter Song by S.J. Jones. I loved this book when it first came out, and I'm interested in seeing how I feel the second time around because it is one that a lot of people did not like. They were really disappointed by it. So I went into it with really low expectations when I first read it, and then I loved it so much. So I'm really excited to read this one again, and I'll be interested in seeing if I have some of the same feelings that other people had when I read this the second time, or if I still really enjoy it like I did the first time. Next up, I have one that I reread often. I reread this last year, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky. This is my favorite book of all time. I'm really excited to read it again. I'm trying to read it every single year. There was a few, maybe like 2 or 3 years that I did not reread it, but I try to read it every year, so here we go. I'm going to be reading this one again. In anticipation of a book coming out this year, I have to reread Catching Fire and Mockingjay. These are my favorite covers. They are the UK 10th year anniversary covers, I believe, and I reread Hunger Games last year, I believe, and I loved it so much. It's one of my favorite series too. In anticipation of the new books coming out later this year, I of course wanted to reread these both. Historically, when I've reread the Hunger Games series and when I read it the first time, Catching Fire has always been my favorite of the books. Mockingjay has been my least favorite of the books. I haven't reread these in several years. I've reread the Hunger Games a couple times, so I want to reread these ones. I know it doesn't really make a difference because the new book coming out takes place before all these, but I think it would be interesting just to catch myself up and like get re-immersed in the world of Hunger Games and see if the new book will live up to these previous books. Then I have Quarantine Book 1, The Loners by Lex Thomas. This is a book that I read right when I first started doing Bookstagram, so that's been 4 years since I started doing Bookstagram, and I read this book, was one of the first ones that I read after that, and I loved it. I pretty much binge read the first like 3 or 4 books, whichever had been published at that time, and I really loved this series. It's about a high school that goes into quarantine, and it turns into like a crazy Lord of the Flies, like crazy all-out situation going on, like end of the world. People are going crazy in this high school. All the teachers have like died, so it's only the teenagers. They're not getting any supplies, so it is a crazy series, not for the faint of heart. Because I read this series so quickly, I'm a little bit fuzzy on the details, and I'm interested in going back and rereading the series and like seeing again why I really enjoyed it the first time and why it was such a page turner. But it's definitely one I think is underhyped, and I would recommend it if you're into that sort of like quarantine, like Lord of the Flies situation. You might like this one. Then another similar one to Winter Song, I have an Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. People hated this book and did not like it at all, and I loved it. So I don't know what that says, but I really enjoyed it. And it's another one I'm really interested in seeing if I think the same, or if I see like what other people thought about this book the second time around, or if I still enjoy it as much as I did the last time. This is following a human girl who lives in this little village on the outside of the Fey lands, and she's a painter, like a portrait painter. A whole situation happens where she is tasked to paint the portrait of a Fey prince that is from the land, so he comes in for her to paint his portrait, and they end up like falling in love throughout the painting process. He like steals her away to the Fey lands, and it's like them traveling through, and each part of the Fey lands is like a different season. So she's like going through the autumn lands, and it's like so lushly described. When I first read this book, all I could picture in my head was being like the most beautiful Studio Ghibli like animation movie. It would be so beautiful as like that type of art style. And I loved this book, so I'm really excited to get a reread of this one and see if my opinion stays the same. During 2019, I reread all of Sarah J Maas's books. So all of the ACOTAR books, all of the Throne of Glass books. I reread all those during this year. So this year I wanted to do something similar a little bit because I really enjoyed doing that. So I will be rereading all of the Red Rising books this year. So every month I'll be rereading probably one of these until I get caught up to the final third book that's coming out soon. So I am going to be rereading Red Rising, Golden Sun, my favorite of the series, Morning Star, and Iron Gold. And this one is not going to be a reread, but I'm reading it, and then after the following of these ones, I'll be reading Dark Age. So it's going to be several months before I finally get to Dark Age. My plan is to read this one and then read the last book that's coming out, so I'll read them like fairly right in a row. But if you don't know what Red Rising is about, it is a science fiction, an epic science fiction book about space wars is basically what it is about. So in this futuristic time, there are different classes of people, and the different classes of people all have like a different type of job, and they're all a different color. So the lowest basically you could go is the red, and it's following a boy who is of the red class, and they are miners on Mars. They mine for a substance there. So this is just basically following his journey, and it goes in a completely sideways direction that I never saw coming when I started this book, because that's all the information that I got was the class system. He's a red miner, so on Mars. That's all I got, and then it went completely left field, so that's all I'm going to be giving you guys. I will say there's like, if you're a fan of the Hunger Games, but you're looking for like a more adult thing, I would recommend this book. But I love this series, and I'm really excited to be rereading it for the first time. I just read this series in 2018, and I adored it so much, so I'm really excited to be continuing and rereading it up until the release of the final book. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down below if you like to reread books, or if there's any particular book that you're wanting to reread during 2020, because I would love to see which books you guys love enough to reread. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!